give you a little bit of history. San Antonio, we've been here for over 20 years. We've seen a lot. We also knew that San Antonio really had no ground game to organize people to make a difference. So a few years ago, I ran across a company called Americans for Prosperity, and they had more money than anybody had a right to. So I knew that we could use some of that. And my brother in crime and misdemeanors, James Booker, I don't know how many of you know him, but he's about this tall. And so we took field directorships with them, and I was there for about a year and realized they didn't know what grassroots organizing was. We introduced Faith Rising in January of last year. We realized, or I realized, that Joshua Initiative was really more of a strategy, a data collector and massager. And it generated strategy that would work in a massive database, which I'll show you in just a little bit, but down the line. So, but we were missing something. We were missing the ability to really communicate on a religious basis when we were talking to the churches. And we talked to a lot of churches. And so we enlarged our board in a circle and added some other folks, Dr. Roland Lopez from Saba and Daryl Horn from Saba, Gene Leffler, who is the president of Lighthouses of Prayer International, and we added Paco Garcia. Paco is the, see if I get this title right, he is the executive director of the National Hispanic Christian Leaders Conference. That's 44,000 churches, by the way. And they do Zoom calls all the time, all over the world. So, and he said, you know, you really need to change the focus a little bit. We're telling the same story, but we're telling it from a spiritual aspect, which is what we should have done all along. So, Faith Rising is really, it's just a network. Churches, people of faith, businesses, etc. And in January, when we launched it, what was most interesting to me was that over 20 organizations came together to sponsor that event that had never all come together before. It was just like the Lord was working. We brought in Dr. Dave Kistler from Washington. He is an international evangelist in Washington, and he told us about 24-hour prayer at the White House and had 2 revivals inside the Pentagon.
Oh, wow.
Would you ever have believed that? So God had to be working. And we brought in Dave Welch, who is the president of the Pastors, U.S. Pastors Council over in Houston, and they're the ones that fought the mayor all the way to the Supreme Court and won hands down. They just bam, bam, bam. But in between those two, we had pastors praying on stage over the 7 different aspects of society. So that was how we kicked off Faith Rising. Following that, Charles Flowers, it wasn't us, it was Charles Flowers had an event, had another 200 people there, and then Paco had an event with, I think, 20 or 30 pastors, and they prayed for 20 days, and stuff was just going on. And it wasn't us, we're not a top-down organization, we're a collaboration, we're a coalition. Everybody supports everybody, which it makes it really nice. So, to the program. Ladies and gentlemen, we're in the middle of a raging storm if you haven't figured that out yet. It's spiritual, and it's where we live. It begs us to answer some very serious questions, not only about what's going on, but about ourselves. Things that we might not have done that we should have done. When I was building this presentation, I was asking the Lord, you know, what? And I was given Matthew 22, and we all know what this is. When, you know, the Pharisees, Jesus had just slam dunked the Sadducees, and the Pharisees were going to get him, so they took a lawyer of all people, and they asked him, you know, what is the greatest commandment? Can you imagine? Who would ask Jesus, what is the greatest commandment? Of course, they didn't believe who he was. But you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. Now, the heart and the soul are easy, but I wonder why they didn't just stop there. Why the mind? And so I began to focus on that, and the Lord wanted me to focus on that. And this is the first and great commandment. So I want you to keep that part of that verse in your mind as we go through this, okay? Just put it back here in the mind. San Antonio. San Antonio has a poverty rate of 20% plus. It ties with Miami. It's probably more than that now, without any question. Joblessness, people hungry, poor education. I know of, we used to call them elementary schools, but you don't do that anymore, do you? What do you call them, middle schools? Academy. Whatever. I know of 2 in one of the districts that are failing. The school is failing. So we have a problem, serious problem. I was talking to a lady Monday, and she does volunteer work and working with graduate students, etc. And she said, Joe, they can't read, they can't write, and they can't do math. I'm thinking, they're graduate students? This is scary. Joblessness, unemployment, we have it. And we're looking at this. This is a border. It's over 25,000 headed our way plus. I was in a meeting the other day, one of the groups that I sit on, and we have people on the border watching things. And it's just incredible. They're finding infants, babies, abandoned. And so they're asking for anything that would help. Pedialyte, diapers, wipes, anything. We've already sent one load down there, and we want to send some others. But these people, we need to understand that most of these people are coming to what they believe is the American dream. A better life for them and their families. About 1%, those are the bad guys. And we need to weed them out. But when they get here, they're going to find that it's not what they thought. It's more like what they left. We have friends from Vietnam that came over on a boat, almost drowned, that asked me, Joe, what's going on? We left this. What are y'all doing? So, when they get here, I'm wondering, are we going to see more of this all over town? And kids hungry? But our focus is on this. Why is it on this? Does this glorify God in any way? Or this? Instead, we're focused on things like this with $25 million so the deer can cross the road, the bridge over Wurzbach. $43 million to plant trees on Broadway instead of helping the businesses. I understand a huge amount of the CARE Act money that came here went off to pre-KSA instead of helping the small businesses that were going under, struggling. And then we have SAWS and the Vista Ridge project, $3.4 billion, supposedly to protect the Edwards Aquifer, which is our primary source of water, or was. The Vista Ridge project is the most expensive water in Texas. It is not near as good as the Edwards Aquifer, and SAWS tried to sell Edwards Aquifer water outside the district, but they got caught, and Abbott vetoed it. What you need to know is the people that live up there, 143 miles away, some of their wells are already pumping air. So, what kind of neighbors are we? Crime. This is from 2017. We're going to get to 2020. But right down the line, we're supposed to be a safer community than others, but we have more crime than cities of comparable size. Now this shows Portland on the low side. I think they've probably come up since then, but nonetheless, maybe we're even with them now. I don't know. 2018, up at the top, crime. Now this is just violent crime and property crime. 71,000 plus incidents that year. And we're going to defund the police? We need to understand this. The crime rate is 66% higher than the Texas average and 79% higher than the national average. San Antonio's violent crime rate is 53% higher than Texas average and 65% higher than national average. Property crime, 69% higher than Texas average and 82% higher than national average. In 2020, September 10, Neighborhood Scout, which is something that businesses look at, to report businesses look at and other people thinking of moving, you have a 1 in 21 chance of becoming a victim of violent or property crime in San Antonio. Now I want each of you to think about your own home. Think about your living room and walk to your front door. Step out on the porch. Look to your left, maybe a house or two. To your right, maybe a house or two, and across the street, that's probably 21 people. 1 in 21 chance of being a victim. That's unacceptable. January through June, this city saw a nearly 34% increase in killings in 2020 as compared to 2019. The Uniform Crime Report from 2020, violent crimes, that's homicide, rape, robbery, and aggravated assault, 11,000 cases. 2020. Property crimes, burglary, larceny, vehicle theft, 54,000. Are you shocked? We don't hear this in the news, do we? We don't hear this in the Express News. However, they could say crime is down, property crime could be down, because in 2012, property crimes were over 82,000. But violent crimes were a lot lower. So we've just traded. You know, when it comes to media, we used to be able to trust what we saw. And I can recall, what was it, Gene, 3 years ago, we opened the media advisory or something in Joshua. And they were advertising, talking about crime was down, et cetera, et cetera. Well, I did about 10 years of volunteer police work in New Mexico, and I knew a little bit better. It didn't seem right, so I went on the federal site, which they have to report accurately to. And we posted that at our meeting, what had actually happened, and there were about, I don't know, 10 or 20, I don't know, guys there from different publications, et cetera. And their jaws just dropped. Said, this is not what we've been told. No, but this is the truth. Human trafficking. San Antonio is located at the intersection of I-10 and 35, which are the two main corridors for human trafficking. Out of the nearly 300,000 Americans that are victimized by human trafficking, 20% comes through Texas. 20%. Child abductions. This is from August 7th, 2020. 800,000 missing children, approximately 2,000 children every day, that's countrywide, are reported to local law enforcement agencies and the FBI. Less than 1/4 of the child abductions are by a stranger, with more girls being abducted than boys. This type of abduction is the most dangerous, and approximately 80% of child abductions by strangers occur within 1/4 of a mile from home. Can you remember when I was growing up, we played outside? Yeah. Nobody worried about anything. There might have been one parent home and 10 houses. Everybody was working to make 2 livings. Nobody worried. Doors were not locked. Not anymore. Roughly 75% of abduction murders occur within 3 hours. after the child goes missing. What are we going to do about it? We all remember this, but do we truly remember these guys and what they fought for? Freedom, not just freedom of territory, but freedom to stand, freedom to direct destiny, freedom to direct what's going on in your own country, on your own territory. Edmund Burke said this, well, no, he didn't say it, but he said something similar, so they always attribute it to him. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. I would say they're all good people sitting here. I'm going to stop right now because what you have seen is bad, and I understand that. But what you're about to see is about 1,000 times worse. Most of the time, we don't even talk about abortion. Abortion is something over there. It happens to somebody else. It's no one we know, or if we do know, they're just kind of shunned a little bit and just left alone. But this is abortion. This is what we as a nation let happen because we didn't stand. And in San Antonio, over 5,000 a year. There's one group, San Antonio Family Association, and you will find them every Friday at 1 o'clock in front of Planned Parenthood in Babcock. It'd be nice for that whole street to be filled and packed. Those women need compassion, not anger or disgust. Restoration, not alienation. There are at least 3 victims for every abortion. The child, God's personal gift to the world, never to laugh, play, or become the gift God offered to the world. The mother, women who experience abortion live statistically shorter lives. The father, forever lost opportunity to live responsibly, to share and care, have a loving family. Without Jesus, the mother and father will experience rejection all their lives. So we need to be, as a church, we need to be pushing restoration ministries instead of condemnation. So, you remember back in the front, and I asked you about your mind. What do you think? Are we loving God with all our mind, with all our abilities and gifts from Him? Is this how we want our home, San Antonio? Remember, is this what we want it to represent? Crime? Abortion? A few years ago, Seth invited me over to his facility, Daily Bread Ministries. And at that time, I was with the company that had all the money, that thought they knew what grassroots was about. And they would have croaked if they knew what I said. But I walked in, and we were really under stress over debt at the time in taxes. And Congress was considering raising taxes on churches 20%. We don't pay taxes right now, but they were going to install 20%. That was really in committee. So this was Saturday, and I walked in. I said, I'm so glad you guys are here today. There was about, I think, 110 pastors in 2 different sessions or something like that. I'm so glad you're here today because yesterday Representative Don Johnson from Delaware brought a bill out of committee taxing the churches 20% off the top. Got real quiet. And Daily Bread at the time was a big concrete building, concrete ceiling, walls, floor, things would echo. You could have heard a pin drop. And I waited. I said, do you know who your representative is? You know who to call to stop this? Nothing. So, well, that's good. Because what I just told you is completely false. But now that I have your attention, could I ask you this? How many of you would say that it's a spiritual problem we have in America as opposed to a debt service, etc.? Raise your hand. Well, they're pastors, gentlemen. Y'all raise your hand. Yes. How many of you would agree that the pastors are the spiritual leaders in America? Raise your hand. Same thing in San Antonio, just like y'all. Fine, why do we have 60 million dead babies? Where were you? And then it got really quiet. In fact, one pastor had his head almost between his knees, and he raised up and he said, "Wow, this is not the recruiting session I thought we were coming to." We did an exit survey, and I'm telling you this because it's extremely important that you understand it. 40% wanted to engage. Only 40%. That is the remnant. It's not the whole church. The other part has a problem. So, you may be wondering why you're here today. Let's talk about that. The coalition and the plan. The question is, are we of one mind? There are two principles in collaboration and coalition, but recognizing that we each have God-given talents, and also that we aren't always the best kids, truly. We're imperfect and have faults, but we agree on the goal. The first rule is everyone does their part to support the whole, and rule number 2 is everyone does their part to support the whole. That's the end of the story. There are 3 legs to this plan: humility, witnessing, and stewardship. Humility is service to others, as we know, the second commandment. Witnessing is sharing the truth, whether it's you one-on-one sharing the gospel, or it's a media sharing the truth and not a fake news type of thing. Gene publishes Engage, which is a long calendar of things that are going on in San Antonio with other churches and around. You need to spread that out. Stewardship, participation in caring for God's gift. What's God's gift? What's that mean? Well, we could be in Uganda. We could be somewhere else where it's not quite so nice. We're here in America, and it's still, and we're in Texas better even right now. So we're in San Antonio. So this is our gift. The Romans, as Gene pointed out the other day, one of the reasons the Romans were so successful is their soldier was just responsible for about 6 feet around him. That's it, right where I am, and you shall not pass. So, humility could be feeding a child, helping an aged person, even just stopping and saying hello, how are you today? Give them 3 minutes or something. You know, people crave relationships. Mowing the yard for somebody who's not even home, let them come home and watch the smile on their face while you hide and look over the fence and just say, you know, while he tries to figure out what's happening. Who did that? Who did that? Taking people to the doctor. Picking up trash. San Antonio's a dirty city. Well, the key thing, though, is prayer. Loving your neighbor as yourself and holding your neighborhoods up in prayer. We want to see the church get out of the 4 walls and find out everybody that lives in all of those blocks and houses over there, and every church around. It may mean that you help the house, you know, spend a few hours or maybe a weekend helping someone that's in need, or cleaning up a bunch and throwing it in a pile so the city will clean it up. That'd be nice. This is the group that did that. This is City Church and University Park Baptist. Living the Word, loving the neighbors as themselves. I would challenge every church to take on some project to do that. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But I must stress, reaching out in prayer and service to those in our neighborhoods is critical, literally. Communication, witnessing. We have a number of resources with Joshua of all kinds. and we can draw on others whatever we need to. So we're putting those in some publications that will go to the hub. The hub will put them in a format and send to the church. We encourage the pastor to add a message to it and then transmit it to his church membership. You see, that way you get about 100% open rate and 100% deal. Now, that's important because our big news media in town, they only have about 80,000 subscribers, and we're in a huge town. But if we do this, between us, we're going to hit about 700,000 homes. You think we could make a difference that way if they knew the truth? One publication is this. It's Faith Rising News. It goes to the believer and to the church. It's targeted to the Christian community. Then we have SA Opinion, and that's targeted directly to City Hall or County Commission, whatever. And it's a little tricky. It's a little in your face. Give you an example. Anybody here drive down Lookout Road? A few? You know how trashy it is? Okay, well, a few months ago, I drove down, because we live over there, and I thought, this is ridiculous. So I put this together, and I took a bunch of pictures, and across the pictures I put a statement that said, "We will not be discriminatory. We will feature a different section of town and a different district each month." And then I had some comment about the city budget and what was not happening, etc. I got a phone call in 15 minutes. And they actually went out there and picked some stuff up. Now, it's worse now, so I don't know what we're going to do now. But, interesting enough, too, there is a big church right there. Big church right there. It wouldn't take them 2 hours to clean that thing up. Anyway, this is a new one. Texas First News. The Texas First News just came to me one day, sitting, and said, "You know what, you need to do this." So we now own Texas First Amarillo, Lubbock, Midland, Dallas, Austin, San Antonio, Houston, the Valley, the Hill Country, and Texas First Border Project. And the idea is for the people in those local communities to look at what's going on there and post it, and then we'll group it all to the main site. So everybody seems to like Texas First. Can't imagine why. This is how we operate. The city, is, as you know, is divided into 10 city council districts. We take those, and I hope you can see this. This is District 7. We take precincts that are contiguous and group them in a small group. And it's kind of like a large neighborhood that way. And then we divide the district itself into sections. And it's a lot easier to understand what's going on when somebody says, I go to Village Parkway. Okay, which district is that in? If I'm across town, I don't even know where Village Parkway is. But from a logistics standpoint and from a data standpoint, all of the voting jurisdictions are logged in our database for all the churches and everything, all of the registered voters. It makes it very simple. And what's interesting about this is we already have key churches in the districts. And if you looked at the 120 that we're working on recruiting, San Antonio looks like this. But we believe there's more than 120. I believe there's about 800, and that's all due to what happened at Seth's, 40%. There's about 1,500 four-wall churches, not counting the house churches. So I think there's more like 800. Out of the 10 city council districts, we've identified 10 pastors. Out of the 29 zones or sections, we've identified 29 pastors. Of the 128 groups, we've identified 70 pastors. And 4 of the municipalities and at least 2 other county areas. The database holds 1,400 plus churches, over 1 million registered voters, and 60 million fields of data. I think, you see those lightning strikes? I think lightning can strike with what we're doing if the church will come together. We stress that each church needs to do some form of this. We call it a community awareness team, or a CAT. If you were Baptist, you'd call it a community awareness committee, you know, something like that. I was told that by a Baptist preacher. You know, we might need to call it a committee. I don't care what you call it. Prayer teams are number one. And y'all are intercessors, so you understand that. We encourage men's prayer, women's prayer, youth, and boys and girls. If you need any help, Lighthouses of Prayer has got guides that help as well. And you know Jeannie very well. So, business outreach. You guys sit in a business sector. Do you reach out to the businesses around? You do? Yeah. Great. You're ahead of the game. Neighborhood outreach, that's self-explanatory. In-reach. Most churches, over time, just don't get this done. They really don't. But it's super important. Resources coordinator, that's an individual that would take a catalog from us and have access or knowledge of all the resources around. Where's the food? Where's the clothing? Where is this help? Where's that help? Where's legal help? Where's whatever? They don't have to do it. They're just the resource person. The assistance coordinator is the one that actually puts them together. So we broke it up like this so that everybody just does a little bit, so you don't get overwhelmed. School liaison. You know, there is a school over there, isn't there? Yeah. Issue coordinator. Okay, this is beginning to get into the city and politics. Issue coordinator is what's going on that needs to be fixed. Deputy voter registrar. This is key. Every church needs a deputy voter registrar, so to make sure everybody that comes is registered to vote. And I'll show you why in a minute. Communications. This is really the number 2 person. Because if we don't have anybody to send communications to, and the pastor can't do everything, the communication's not going to go out. So this person needs to be good with email, and website wouldn't hurt, but email primarily. Get out the vote coordinator. This is simply a person that calls everybody in church when it's voting time, have you voted yet? That's all they do. Simple. A little bit for everybody. The bonus area, once in a while I run across folks that are really interested in what goes on in city council, and you may be thinking about running later in county commission. We have training that we can provide. And if you want to do something like this, we'll show you when to go, where to go. We'll introduce you to some people that do go, etc. And I know we're talking about politics, and that's a bad word in the church. So let's just talk about kingdom votes.
Amen.
Let's forget politics. Let's just talk about Jesus.
Amen.
What would Jesus do? Would Jesus sit in the chair when it was voting time? I don't think so. I don't think he did. So let's do something, because your kingdom vote represents who you are and your witness to those in your community, state, and nation. But more importantly, your kingdom vote is your personal testimony before a holy God that you care about, and you are his faithful steward of his gift to you, the land in which you live. Right now, that's America, the land of the free. I'm not so sure how long it might remain that way, because as I look around, it gets a little difficult. We'll see that. But if we can muster 300 churches, we can muster 200,000 to 400,000 votes. I say, 300 churches, that many votes? How'd you get that? Husbands and wives, and they all have neighbors, right? And if they're excited, like Rob is over this, how many votes are sitting here? I didn't count people. 30? See, you're responsible for 30. Each one of you, if you go be responsible for 30, be a cinch. This is why. City Council, and this is the last election. District 2, Sullivan, a little over 3,000 votes, and that was half of the people that voted. That's not a lot. You know, when you realize each city council district has 70, 100,000 voters, that's not much. Highest ones were District 9, John Courage, and District 10, Clayton Perry. But it doesn't take much work to get elected city council, really. It doesn't take many votes, seems like. As a matter of fact, of the 783,000 registered voters in the 2018 election, 13% voted. 6.33% elected the mayor. That's a travesty. That's an embarrassment. But that's higher than it used to be. 61,000 registered voters, or 7.8%, elected our city council. That's sad. Is it any surprise that we have a problem? Are your sidewalks all fine? Are your streets all fine? Yeah. Holes? Yeah. Potholes. We're short on police. We don't know about fire. Yeah. Crime, obviously, is rampant. If we're committed and are going to stand in the gap in honor of Christ, we need to understand the war. And this is Ephesians 6:12. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood. You all know this. You could probably just read it back to me. This is the enemy. And this is why, a few years ago, courtesy of Seth again, I was introduced to a gentleman by the name of Randy Skinner from Dallas of Feed 3. Randy had spent time on a federal task force studying crime, and they couldn't figure out, why is crime rampant over here? There's no crime over here. That doesn't make sense. Well, as the more they studied, they began to understand. You see there, Genesis 4:10, your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. Blood had been spilt on the ground. So we took that over to Harold Teague at San Antonio Baptist Association, who's a history buff. Well, Harold mapped all the battles in Bexar County. But he didn't stop there. He mapped Planned Parenthood and abortion and sexually oriented businesses, and I think that's in Jude 1-7 and Exodus, and he mapped the non-Christian worship places, thou shalt have no other God before me. And you put them all together, it looks like that. Well, being an old volunteer officer, I thought, I think I'll go look and see if I can find the crime map. So I did. And I pulled up, here's the crime map. Now, we did this in 2016. And this was a little bit revealing. If you take the crime map and you overlay the other map, isn't that interesting? And I can guarantee you it's worse now. But if I go back 20 years, the same blueprint is there. The same hotspots are there. It's not an issue of where's the crime going to be. We know where it's going to be. So what are we going to do about it? Ladies and gentlemen, America is burning. And the question is the church going to burn along with it? Christians are being murdered around the world. And you can say, Joe, that's across the ocean. That's not even here. Nowhere close. So let's get a little closer. Mexico, Cristero War, 90,000. That's just south of the border. I picked up this today. I thought I had heard this, but I had not seen the writing. The New American reported April 8th in 2013, the Obama administration's Department of Defense was caught training U.S. troops that Catholics, Orthodox Jews, and evangelical Christians are to be considered religious extremists. Christians are to be considered religious extremists. even equating the major religions representing more than half of Americans with truly violent groups such as Al-Qaeda, the KKK, and Hamas. That's scary. San Antonio Family Association has been dubbed a domestic terrorist. And all they do is stand in front of Planned Parenthood and pray. The federal demonization of Christians, conservatives, and libertarians, meanwhile, has even percolated down to the state and local level. Last year, for example, the Justice Department was caught teaching police, now this comes out of the same article as the previous, that popular political bumper stickers, anybody ever have a bumper sticker on your car? Yeah. Supporting the Bill of Rights or national sovereignty could be potential indicators of domestic terrorism. Just last week it emerged that law enforcement in Colorado was being taught that organizations and individuals who take the Bible literally may present a danger to police officers. Wow. Last time I checked, we were the ones that were helping the police. So, stewardship, I ask you again, where is our mind? This is the first and great commandment. And the second is likened to the first, love your neighbor as yourself. And on these two hang all the law and the prophets. If we could get those two right, we would have a really wonderful world. So my question to you is, do we really love him? If we don't love him with all three, do we really love him? In Luke 16, you find, what is this I hear about you? Give an account. Your stewardship. We're supposed to be the stewards of America, for you can no longer be steward. You might say, Joe, you're pulling that out of context. No, I don't think so. That's one of the first situations of greed, graft, and corruption. We can go through the whole thing, but this is appropriate. So stewardship. Will you stand in the gap? Will you lead and stand with your church to do the same? We're almost through. You see, it didn't happen overnight. It didn't happen automatically. Texas is the center of the nation, basically. And the Alamo is the center of Texas, the spirit of Texas. The schools is where this started. The schools are the low-hanging fruit. The school boards. When I look at what it takes to get on a school board, it's nothing. Northeast, 3 districts, unopposed. Judson, 1,000 votes. Alamo Heights, no contest. North Side, 3,000 votes. Harlandale, 300 votes. South Side, 600 votes. San Antonio, 1,200 votes. Let's take it back. Let's secure the future for our children. Jesus also said, you feed my sheep, but if you love me, you'll keep my commandments. So once again, I must ask, do we really love him? Choose wisely. God bless you all, and thank you for your time.